as is tradition with Dumping with Scrump, it used to be hosted by Shortfat Otaku, and now is hosted by me. So there's a reason that transition happened, and SFO has rather fallen from the respect of many respectable people. And so part of the focus of these shows is likely to be a recurring display of his most recent cringe.
We do a bit of Devwatch, yes.
What we have is a video here from someone called the Aristocratic Utensil. Now, chat, have anyone ever heard of this person?
I have no idea who that is. Who could it be? Apparently, he's some kind of fork. No, he's a knife.
It says utensil. No. Yeah, it's not exactly clear immediately what utensil he is, but yeah, I think you're onto something there.
I believe he has a second channel called Based Spork. No, he doesn't. That's Spoon. It's Spoon. Everyone knows that Spoon.
It's Spoon, the one that Aiden streams with.
This was his video that seems to have got quite a lot of views for ostensibly just a video about Dev. Because this is really what kind of I noticed that it is kind of hotting up because people are just noticing some of the stuff that's going on. Again, this is once again another shot in the VTuber war, which we covered in the first episode of the new Dumping with Scrump, the special episode, the pilot. Those of you who were there who remember it.
It's a while ago.
I'm making it sound grander than it is, but it's he did say some terrible things about people who really didn't deserve it, though. I still find that relatively shocking, to be honest with you.
I remember the
feel like shit. Just want to back.
I remember the picking me thing with that, and there was a lot of I did need to defend Dev on a few things. There was a lot of misconceptions floating around. She just to say this in case it comes up, picking me was, it seems clear, planning to switch to a different VTuber agency, and her being bullied probably did not cause her to leave the internet. It may not even have hastened her leaving the company that she was in. The problem is, and with almost all the drama I ever see or get even tangentially involved in, the problem I try to point out, same thing with Kraut, is that they are wrong. Dev's arguments were shit. And he was also, aside from that, siding with the people who were bullying Pikami, who was pretty much the softest target that you can imagine. So Dev made himself look very, very bad in terms of his angle, and his arguments sucked, as they often do. But the rest of it, I'm not sure. So we can watch Spoon's video here, at least some of it. But I may have a different perspective than he does on some of this. I did see this video come up occasionally, this thumbnail, but I had no idea Spoon had made it. And inevitably, I'm going to watch this and to merely regret not making this video myself, because I'm sure that I would have said things a little differently. Maybe I will. Let's see. Oh God, he's got an intro. How long do I have to sit and watch this?
It's only a short intro, don't worry.
Those pictures from Civ, they might have been. They look like Civ 5 art.
I'm not sure. The thing is, I don't have an intro because I would always just cringe at my own intro, so I stay introless.
I wouldn't use an intro for a video these days. I do a cold open, maybe then a 1 second intro, and I have that 2 or 3 second intro for my streams because streams are really long. I remember a friend of mine who was doing YouTube maybe 10 years ago. He had a 30-second intro for his Minecraft videos, and I said, dude, that's not a great idea. It wasn't. Yeah.
I had this spat on the Twitter, and I want to shamelessly monetize it for entertainment purposes, and also showcase why Dev, otherwise known as Shortfat Otaku, annoys the hell out of everyone lately. Even V himself is stumped by Dev's actions, saying—
I would not have worded it that way. The problem is not that he is annoying people. The problem is that he is an embarrassment to anyone even tangentially associated with him. It's not annoying. That will make him think, ha, I'm annoying the rightoids. That is probably, he probably said that out loud when he saw this video, this title. So I wouldn't have worded it that way.
He's also just kind of annoying, but
I don't find him annoying.
I wouldn't either.
I would almost rather that he was fucking up than that he was just idling along. Obviously, idling along means he's doing less damage to our side, but if he's fucking up, at least it's a bit more interesting. At least there's something to criticize there. And criticizing in general, I think, helps the entire side. But at least showing what not to do, if not, in fact, resolving a problem of someone doing what they're not supposed to do.
He seems to be on a speed run to piss everyone off. This is one of the convos that sparked the whole VTubing thing, going all the way back to the Picame fiasco, which V handily won, by the way. And once again, he doesn't listen to any of the arguments, which is what causes lamented Guide here to say this. Dev, right here is precisely why I stopped watching you. Look, it's fine to disagree, even to be wrong, but what I can't stand about you anymore is you refuse to listen or even try to. You always dismiss arguments you disagree with. Case in point, you're doing it with V. With him replying, "This is why I am happy you got filtered," you look at me replying to V and think it's me dismissing his arguments or not understanding them, while you simultaneously don't understand mine. It is good you are on the outside of my community now. And
So yeah, this whole filtering idea, this is not unusual. I've mentioned this as well, but you got to be careful with what you're filtering for. And recently, Dev's behavior has been filtering away all of the diligent members of his audience, all the intellectually honest members of his audience, merely filtering for more leftists. And I'm sorry to be that basic, but that is essentially what he's been doing. And not the honest leftists either.
It's a big lack of internal consistency in that he seems to vacillate between positions, which makes a lot of people raise their eyebrows. But anyway, it's some of it's kind of here and there, but it's largely just an accumulation of things. And quite honestly, a lot of it is just an attitude problem. I think a lot of people who've dealt with him in the background, I get some of it sometimes. God knows why. It's been years now, but I get people DM me being like, "Why was he so terrible? Why was he really like awkward and horrible to me?" When I asked him a very normal question, "What's wrong with him?" And I get that at like least. I get it multiple times a week sometimes when he's on one of his weird tears. And the reason that we talk about it is because it just keeps coming back. It's like a bad smell. I always get asked about it. And so sometimes it is just good to address it.
So I want to see if he actually was dismissing the argument here. What was the argument that V made that he's responding to? You didn't even get it right, V. Pickame's simp said, "We can spoil princess even off the internet." So some people did say this about Pickame, which turned out not to be true. They went a bit too far with it. "I can't deal with this." It turned out she was not actually traumatized. She was thrown under the bus by her company and promptly left it. I'm not sure he was dismissing V's argument, although I want to read exactly what V said here, just to find out. Well, can we go forward, please? You're gonna let me? Yes.
It's VTuber drama, but it's more the fact that there's just all this needless drama for no reason. It just keeps going.
I feel like Spoon is going to premise what he's about to say on the idea of lamented Guide here being correct that Dev is dismissing the argument, and I'm not sure that he is. It's hard to determine, especially because V's tweet here is elided, or whatever the right word is.
To V and think it's me dismissing his arguments or not understanding them, while you simultaneously don't understand mine. It is good you are on the outside of my community now. And Skooma getting in on the action as well, saying, "You may not directly shit on people, Dev, but people feel shat upon regardless by your attitude of disregarding comments. When people try to explain how you are wrong, you can't just take an L. You have to nitpick some semantic or technicality on how you are right."
I think there are some kinds of arguments where people... I think Dev probably is the kind of person who is easy to misunderstand on some things, and this is why I'm careful when I criticize anyone. And many times we will watch a Dev video and I'll defend his video because it's fine, even though other people have said it's bad. Even though Dev is unpopular at the moment with a lot of people, even though he has been doing some very odd things and making some very bad takes, that doesn't mean that you can just assume everything about him is wrong. You still got to make sure you understand what he's saying. And I think some people, maybe in that thread, misunderstood him, and maybe that's partly because of his communication differences, and then ran with that misunderstanding. I didn't see the full thread, but I also didn't see anything really objectionable from Dev, and I've seen some objectionable stuff from Dev, and it wasn't really in there. This is why, like, you can't be too thirsty for drama. I think it's fine to get involved in drama as long as you don't take it too seriously. You're not like directly staking anything, and you know, you just keep it fun. You benefit from it. Always make the drama more fun for your viewers than it was before you arrived, or more fun for someone than it was before you arrived. Don't be the kind of person that thirsts for it, that needs to see every example of someone's behavior as wrong. It empowers Dev if you do that. If too many people do that. It empowers him not just in his own mind, but socially as well to everyone else.
Yeah, people do need to be careful about not reading in too much.
Yeah.
Go on, yeah.
Oh, you are right. Which is true. Dev can have an entire comment section telling him why he is wrong over and over again, and he will flat out refuse to ever take an L. And this is why so many people can't stand you right now, Dev, because you have a massive fucking ego. And that's me saying that. And not only do you have this massive fucking ego, it's incredibly brittle. Because as people point out to you, you have this disturbing lack of any humility, and you just want to sit in this echo chamber being surrounded by simps who all huff your farts and kiss your ass. It's no wonder people call you a drama whore. And yeah, you can say I'm doing the same.
This is very simplistic. I think Dev will, if he ever saw this, would just dismiss it. I think there's more to it than this. I think get closer to the root of the issue, which I've tried to do. Dev sees this, or seems to see it, as this is just his normal opinions, that he's just carrying on as normal, and the right-wingers are all doubting him, saying this is almost to the level of basic insults, what Spoon is saying here. You could say this to almost anyone. I mean, I think it does apply to Dev, but it's almost totally generic, so I don't think this would do anything to affect his position or the position of his fans.
I was just more pointing out that there's been drama surrounding the whole VTuber thing again. It's
I don't mind.
What I found more interesting was him just going around and calling people fascists again. That's another interesting one. I will say Spoon there might have let himself down a bit, mostly because I think he was just a bit angry because he'd basically have Dev on his back about 3 different things for many days.
I am being perhaps high standards with this because I have dealt with Dev a lot, and I've done these arguments, and I've tried to defend him when other people have misconceptions, and then, you know, Spoon kind of, I don't know, so far, not really putting in the same degree of effort so far, but maybe not. I'll watch a bit more.
To be fair though, when people do put in effort, it doesn't make a difference, so you might as well just go, fuck off, you're an idiot. It has the same effect. I can kind of see why, so...
I think using Dev as a way to understand a general problem that we can then inoculate from that problem in future is the best way that we can use him. Also, of course, for entertainment.
I suppose. You use him as like a thought exercise.
Sure.
You know, he's an abstraction.
Which means we need to be accurate.
Yes. He's a being of pure fat. I mean, a being of pure thought.
It's both. It's both.
It can always be both.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the difference is I bring receipts for my arguments. I don't just pull them out of my ass. Here's my tweet that made me get in on all of this, because I found everyone but V's arguments to be bollocks, because they were. I can't believe I have to defend this damn Romanian, but his attackers are worse. If you people can't understand the man enjoys an animated avatar with normal human reactions, then what the fuck is wrong with you people? Also, Pipkin Pippa is hilarious. Come on. When this one's swinging a miss.
I mean, Spoon, you just got done saying that you bring receipts for your arguments, and this is I don't really see an argument here, and there's certainly no receipts. So again, it's something that is very generic that you could say to anyone. But Dev would say, yes, I do bring receipts for my arguments. There's sources in the video description. The problem is not having sources to back up your arguments, because a lot of arguments don't need sources. They're reasoning based. They're based on things that are axiomatic, that are already agreed upon. So again, I think just missing the mark here with the criticisms.
With the N-word at me, I'm African, Dev. By Canadian law, doesn't that land you in prison in that commie hellhole you live in? I actually replied to him to that saying, coming from you, that's like a serial killer lecturing me on morality. Fuck off, Canadian. V coming in, imagine how bad your takes were that you make the political guy give a response. Is why I said to him, the whole of the internet is dunking on his ass right now and no one agrees with him. Take the L and shut the hell up, dude. Your ego is out of freaking control.
It's more just a continuation of this whole thing in that it won't go away, because I don't think it was even originally about the pick me stuff again. It was about him basically going off half-cocked on another content creator for, I think, from my point of view, basically no reason, which should have been explained beforehand. There's some missing context here. But I don't know, the one that really got me, because I don't think this video goes any other places, really. I think the rest of it is just Spoon having a bit of a rant. which is fair enough. But I don't know. The big one that got me was him then calling him and then also him basically denying something he's acknowledged in the past, which is the big one that got me, and the one that I've made a couple of about now, which is him denying 1350, which is
we'll get to that, yeah.
Which is baffling to me. I don't understand how you can deny our Lord and Savior the FBI crime statistics after using them so often on this very show. They have been used. The thing he's denying here has been used on this very show, on Dumping with Scrump, the previous iteration, that is, now.
I was annoyed about the pick me thing because people did make the wrong argument when the right argument was just sitting there waiting for someone to make it. So hounding Dev to admit that the wrong argument against him is an L he should take when the right argument is just sitting there waiting for you, it's not good. It makes you look almost as bad as him. Okay, so Spoon says, listen here, chubby, you've called my position proto-fascist, and you live in a fucking dictatorship that's run by a cucked soy boy with a bold German bastard's hand up his ass. You're in no position to tell me shit, to which Dev says, your position is proto-fascist in the same way that Molebugs is. It's true, but not at all relevant to how dumb leftoids use the word fascist. Okay, it's somewhat ironic. He then says, I didn't get what the neo-reactionaries yes, were about until Ernst Junger, but now I do, and you're just as bad as the socialists, he says. This sounds very esoteric, and I don't give a shit about about this like silly right-wing editarian ideology that if Spoon really does hold such ideology, but I do find that Dev's like Spoon probably holds some like esoteric right-wing ideologies that I wouldn't agree with and not really that interested in learning about. However, Dev has no idea how to deal with people with ideology. He may have read the academic material, but applying it is its whole other step, Dev. That's a whole other thing, and that requires someone with intellectual honesty and a bit of diligence, a bit of humility, and I don't see that with you, Dev. It's never just about reading.
If you know... the problem is now that Curtis Yarvin's rather mainstream. He's not somebody who's like a goose stepper in the. He's written stuff for Tablet magazine, for Christ's sake. I mean, when we met him, we kind of made fun of that a bit because Tablet magazine's a very staunchly Jewish publication. It's very odd to hear people calling Curtis Yarvin any flavor of fascist because he very, very, very clearly is not. The man is he's a Jew who lives in San Francisco, and people kind of make fun of him for it a bit. But he's someone who's got some interesting thought. He's a lot of people consider him a bit of a theory cell in some ways, but he's not somebody who's a quote unquote fascist in any capacity. He's certainly very different than like a Richard Spencer character, who even then, if you look at what Richard Spencer actually says and believes, it's not contiguous with fascism proper. So it is the stupid mislabel. Be specific. If you're going to label somebody something, be specific. And going around saying I'm not using it like a fascist, not using it like a leftist, sorry, whilst also using it like a leftist is very, very funny.
There's how many people in the world today call someone a fascist and are using that term correctly? Almost no one.
Oh, the whole thing is that it's all based in kind of a time period anyway. It's like fascism properly doesn't exist really. Or if it does, it exists in very, very, very tiny amounts because it is a specific thing. In the same way, really, that revolutionary communism doesn't really exist anymore.
It is different
today, it's mostly gone.
Yeah, but
a lot of people
you could argue they both sort of mutated.
A lot of people who describe things as communist are wrong. They're not being specific, and they're not making a particularly salient argument when they do it. That's why I don't go around saying that everything is socialism like a lot of neocons do, because it's imprecise.
Fair enough. I think sometimes it's enough, because sometimes it is in like socialism enough, and socialism is a bad idea in that case, and you can explain why it's wrong. But yeah, sometimes it's better to go more specific. And obviously sometimes it's mistargeted as well. Sometimes something will be called socialist when it's only the sort of very, very light end of it. Dev says, neo-reactionary writing is interesting the same way as socialist writing is. Outsiders looking in and critiquing the liberal world. Neo-reactionaries themselves are also the same as socialists. Revolutionaries whose ideas make the world worse. It's good there's only a few of them. I don't know. Like this is two people arguing over something where I disagree with both of them, I think.
It's just the case of that it's another case of somebody going around screaming fascist. And the people who are supposed to be the alternative politics influencers, that's one of the things that they complain most about from everyone else.
Indeed.
And I think it's really silly when people go around and do that.
Yeah, fair enough. Libertine saying, for the most part, the neos just reject or dislike Enlightenment ideas. That's probably pretty accurate, as far as I understand, for neo-reactionary. Or, you know, there's a term a lot of people like to use. I know people who've used it for themselves, for example. I'm not just using it as an attack.
It's also like a very out-of-date label now. It's something that happened in the mid-2010s and with some of the Grey Mirror stuff. And it's kind of something that is already in the past in many ways. You know, I don't want to bring up Nick Land here because that's a whole other rabbit hole. Because Nick Land is somebody who's... I'm not sure if his writing is particularly sane or not in some ways, but it's somewhat interesting. He's almost like a bizarre outsider artist in some ways, as like a political theorist. But again, he couldn't really be described as a quote unquote fascist. Him and Morwell are more. They are outsiders, yes, but they're not bizarre revolutionaries. You're right. Their whole gimmick is the fact that they will question certain things that generally are not questioned, and that's the angle that they work from. And that's not something that's fascism. It's just it's all so tiresome.
I welcome the inclusion of such thinking, though I do disagree with it. Very pro-Enlightenment myself. I think it's possible that with fascism and socialism, there's a tendency for those who like the thing to minimize what it means so that they can sort of know true Scotsman, but also sort of defend their thing from people that aren't them, but that they both use the label. They want to sort of own the label, which is understandable. There's a tendency to do that, and there's a tendency for their opponents to widen the label so they can use it to criticize and to collectivize, to categorize as many things as they can, so that they can use that negative association on the label to attack things that are similar to it, just similar enough. Both of these things, both these phenomena, are somewhat, not exactly dishonest, but they can be dishonest, but somewhat tactical approaches, somewhat tactical rhetorical devices. And that could be all that this fascism thing is, the fascism expanding on the left, of course, because it's useful. But as you say, Scrump, and I assume why you link this primarily, is Dev shouldn't be doing that. And he's always said about this clear change in direction that we've all noticed, that he hasn't changed, everyone else has. No, Dev. No, you really can't make that claim anymore when you start saying things that Dev of 2016 to 2020, or maybe a little earlier, would have thought, wow, that's cringe. What SJW said this? You in a few years, Dev. It was you.
It was you. Oh no, the leftism is coming from inside the house. Anyway, let us get on to the main course. Because this one even I was surprised by. This is the real meat of the conversation, I would say.
Yeah. NBA star Ryan Rollins is accused of stealing groceries, body wash, and candles from the same Target store 7 times, despite a fully guaranteed $1.7 million salary with the Wizards this season. Oh dear.
Jontron is somewhere laughing.
And then
it just is so funny, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's remarkable. Like, did he spend it all, or does he just like thievery? Could be either. We don't know. And then this respondent says, almost like it's not about socioeconomic factors, which it's not entirely. It's often very much not at all. And there are many things which you really can't blame on it. Then Dev says in response, the implication this guy is making is something like black people are genetically predisposed to steal. Not true, Dev. I got into that once I finished reading your message. He then says, when it's probably more like the poverty mindset of having to get as much as you can immediately is hard to shake even after legitimately climbing out of poverty. Okay, so Dev is wrong and then wrong in this message. Not horrendously wrong, but I think I know how. The natural assumption to make when someone says it's not about socioeconomic factors is to assume that it's about genetics, but that's not the only thing it could be. Notably in this case, maybe you could argue this is part of socioeconomic factors, but I don't think it's how that's usually used. I think that the Democrat Party in particular, but the establishment broadly, has, at this point, it will have affected the genetics essentially, but have culturally indoctrinated blacks into being an army to sabotage the US. And so
Yes.
I don't think blacks inherently have to be this way. There are blacks in Africa who view the blacks in the US as a degenerate subrace.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because Africa Twitter is so you think like I'm afraid that Africa Twitter actually does put like white nationalist Twitter to shame in many ways. A lot of it's a little bit sniveling from like white nationalist Twitter, to be honest with you. A lot of the people who are internet wignets don't acquit themselves very well. But the Africa stuff, it's just like, yes, there's a reason our ancestors sold you. And it's just like, we sold you because you are from a low caste. That
is the real reason. I mean, they're not wrong. So yeah,
because a lot of the time they talk about like the returning diaspora stuff on Black Twitter. Just to finish my point, and that is basically how they reply. And it's just like, well, it's just like, yes, my grandfather sold you for a reason. Do not come back.
Yeah, fair enough. So as I said, like, whatever you want to say about the genetics across the broad, all blacks versus all whites, there are differences, of course, but I don't think those differences are irreconcilable. I don't think those differences mean that blacks are immune to civilization. I think the blacks in the US have been deliberately sabotaged for generations to the point that now probably it is somewhat genetic, but it didn't have to be. It's not originating from genetics as far back as, 50, 100 years ago. The concern here about Dev's position is that it's not just a knee-jerk reaction hunting down the racists wherever you can't find them, but it's almost exactly the same thing I'd expect from a bread tuber here from Dev. Very disappointing from Dev here. And the guy here who allegedly legitimately rose out of poverty, I have no idea if he did, and Dev's argument that the poverty mindset's hard to shake. Dev, they are not fucking animals. I don't think they're animals, do you? They have the ability to rationally comprehend what they're doing.
Some of that. I'll get the IQ. There's some like, once you get below a certain point.
Is that what Dev's saying though? Is that what Dev is saying? They are too stupid not to be criminals. Is that what you're saying, Dev?
I don't know. To settle this, we might have to get the calipers up. I'm sorry, Dev. You've made it so you've backed into the corner. The calipers are coming out. His skull pan says he could reason this.
I suspect some of them might actually be too stupid. The problem is that Dev's argument requires him to be saying that quite a lot of them are, and I don't think he would actually be willing to say that. What I'm saying is that they aren't all like that, and there's no need to assume this guy is, but Dev is assuming it, and he has to assume it because that's the only way he can get away with his argument.
Once you get below about 75, it gets a bit iffy, but, that's what we used to have institutions for.
Yeah,
and then we don't have the institutions anymore. So anyway, let's finally keep going before I go for another tangent.
To this, Artemis Fowl, who I talked to a lot quite some years ago, haven't talked to him in a while, wouldn't mind talking to him again, says, now do violent crime and why poor whites commit less than rich blacks. To which Dev says, show me those numbers. What Artemis is quoting here is something that I have heard, and I think I've seen numbers on it, but I can't remember if I have specifically.
It's the JonTron meme. It's JonTron. It's JonTron and Destiny. It's exactly what it is. And you know what? It was right. Because Steve Saylor, who's a bit of a meme, if people are still on Twitter, Steve Saylor is the guy with the receipts. Although he slightly embarrassed himself recently with some of the porosity of the human intelligence stuff. Because quite honestly, a lot of the research to do this these days is illegal. So some of the numbers we have are a bit dodgy, but that's just because you're not allowed to redo the research anymore, which is a shame. But anyway, he's quoting a study, quite a famous study here, because there's been quite a few of them, that shows, yes, indeed, rich whites do indeed commit less crimes. Sorry, poor whites do indeed commit less crimes than middle class and rich blacks. It's a puzzling one because they don't seem to have an answer for it, but he does have the data.
So the black line is ratio, percent of black sons incarcerated. The left axis is the legend or the metric. Blue is percent of white sons incarcerated, which is obviously much lower. Red is ratio of black sons over white sons incarcerated. Okay, so it's been going up. So the ratio of black sons to white sons incarcerated, so the more black sons to white sons, the higher this graph will be, has been going up over time. Oh no, that's not time at the bottom, that's the wealth. So
yes.
Okay, so it's actually even worse than...
It never touches. Look at those lines.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
It's actually...
Yes, it is that bad.
Yeah, it's actually much worse than just rich blacks still commit more crimes than poor whites. It's worse than that. Apparently, it's that a greater percentage of the sons of rich blacks are incarcerated than of rich whites.
Or than of poor whites, yes. It's far. If you look at where the points are, if you look at there is no point where you can be rich enough as a black person to not basically be as likely to be incarcerated. A lot of people take this as evidence of like racial bias, but as we've seen with a lot of the George Floyd stuff, and as we've seen with a lot of the DIE stuff, the opposite seems to be true within the American system, especially when it comes to college admissions. You have this massive, positive action push that's existed since the 1960s, and it hasn't moved the needle. If anything, it's actually just made things a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that is the thing, is when you see a discrepancy like this, and it's the same thing with the wage gap as well.
I forgot how bad this. It's such it's such a graph.
When you see a discrepancy like this, it's just at the wage gap, there's always going to be an assumption of the cause. And a low-quality thinker will say, the cause is my pet issue, and that means I get to continue making the stupid arguments I'm making. Like with the wage gap, the cause is sexism. Whereas, in fact, the cause could be any number of other things that they just have not considered. In this case, with black and white crime, especially when it comes to including the wealth, your average leftist will say, bias in the data, racism, inherent racism in the system, all this stuff. Whereas the right wing will generally say they actually do commit more crimes. They won't even necessarily say that it's because of genetics, as Dev assumed up there, just that they do in fact commit more crimes, and that is worth noting. It has been borne out, as Scrump says, it has been borne out by the evidence of the ways that people have tried to deal with the situation, that the right is correct, that it's not about bias, it's not about bad numbers, it's not about the way blacks are treated. Actually, it's kind of the opposite. Even when they're treated well, even when they're given everything you can possibly give them, it still happens and in fact gets worse.
The problem is, like I said, the actual undertaking, the research needed to settle why it is, like an actual honest appraisal of the facts, is illegal. It's actually impossible, which is one of the things that worries me most about. I hate talking about Western civilization as it's kind of a bit of an airy concept right now, but I guess about kind of the body of scientific knowledge that we have in general. It's just that certain avenues of investigation are completely unallowable, and people will sit there and assume things. Maybe it's not, but there seems to be a lot of evidence that, yes, there might be a genetic propensity for people whose ancestors were 200 years ago actual hunter-gatherers. There does seem to be, some quite good evolutionary psychology reasoning behind that. And it's also just there's something to be said as well about the shape of societies, and basically how certain people aren't compatible with how modern society works, which I do generally sympathize with. But it's just that conversation can never happen under current conditions. It's a conversation we simply cannot have.
The struggle is that the truth of this is going to be very multifaceted and complex. All kinds of factors across time interacting with each other in different ways to produce the result we have today. There's going to be racial influence, there's going to be cultural influence, there's going to be individual influence on entire collectives, for example, and there's all kinds of geographic influences, all kinds of things will influence the end result. But your average leftist, when you say any of that, if you say anything other than they're an entire victim class, will say you just think it's genetic. No one, it seems, is willing to look deeper, except some of the right are willing to look deeper. But you have to. And I'm willing to say, if it is true pretty much anything about this situation, if it is true. And I can believe that given that they have been, as you said, pretty basic civilization relatively recently, that they have not adapted as much to civilization. I don't believe that they couldn't, only that, you know, and part of it's sabotage, as I say. I think they could have done by now. I think some have as well.
It's again, it's very, very difficult. But there's, I don't know, there's with an absence of evidence, I'm afraid that what chat likes saying, chat's favorite word might just be the reasoning. I'm afraid that they might be just expecting too much of basketball Americans in certain ways. But we'll see. I guess we'll see. But it's very silly to be doing this because, like I said, he's defended again JonTron. He defended JonTron over this. We both did explicitly. There's a dumping with Scrump out there where he basically makes this argument, and I think we get out basically this graph. I'll have to find it somewhere. But maybe I could just make an entire thing of past dev arguing with current dev.
That would be good. Yeah,
it's just baffling though because it's something that does exist and it's something there's been flare-ups of before. It's not like this is an obscure fact. Like I said, there was the whole JonTron drama was about this.
Here's a perhaps novel way of putting it, chat, which might help to elucidate what I'm talking about. If you were to, and this sounds like I'm cheating, but hear me out. If you were to remove from this graph the blacks who are, say, the victim of the cultural sabotage that's been going on of their race, and the pandering and the propaganda and the probably massive election rigging and the compactifying them into cities and all of this the crime and the fatherlessness and the imprisonment, all of that. If you were to take away those who have been affected by that and just keep the blacks that have evaded that and have adopted Western culture, the black line here probably would be much closer to the blue line, maybe even on par with it. In that case, we are talking about the portion of blacks in the US who have actually fully adapted to Western culture. And I'm not making a claim on what portion that is. I'm just saying that there is a portion who have, and they are fine. Now,
it's getting very Chris Rock.
Well, that of course would confound the data because that's not accurate. There's loads of blacks who aren't like that. I know. What I'm trying to say here is that they shouldn't have got to America, or the American system should not have got them into that situation. What you should have of other races in your countries is just the ones who have successfully adapted. The race is not the issue. Because you will always have some in a race who will adapt. Those are the only ones that should be there. Of course, that's an ideal. You're never going to get 100%, but that's the ideal you're aiming for. The problem is what you've done with them. The problem almost never originates in genetics, or almost never is exclusively genetic. There's always more to it. And in that case, that's what it is. I think even with the genetic lines that you have available, more could have been done. They could have been handled better. I'm not blaming Americans in general for this. This is, I think, a deliberate long-term sabotage for a number of reasons.
I think that's probably enough Devwatch for now, but I just thought that was funny in that he's basically denying stuff. He's very, very, very like full-throatedly argued the opposite direction in the past.
He didn't respond to these numbers.
Nope.
He asked for them to be shown and didn't respond to them. Not that I can see. Maybe he did it as a quote tweet.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
He responded to a reply to it. Okay. This guy is saying what we were saying. This guy says, well, you got shown the numbers, going to respond or just clam up like you normally do when something explodes in your face. That being said, I doubt it's genetic predisposition. That's stupid, but because they know our current society will come right into their defense. That's part of it, but I don't think that's all of it. He then says, I don't fucking live online. I fucking doubt that. I fucking doubt.
That was my favorite little bit of it, because that's just not... it's very, very online.
So that is the only thing he put in the entire response thread. was like his excuse for why he's not going to reply. And like, okay, Dev, fine. You're a busy guy. You don't have to respond to every Twitter post, but can you respond? Not convinced.
I think Mr. Sailor, like he tends to do, has him there. As I explain it, as we go to the next step, he's transformed into a corn cob, and he can't transform back. He's been sat there for like 2 years at this point, going, "I'm not owned, I'm not," as he, you know, transforms into a corn cob.
And then the last thing here was V saying, "So Sleepy Devo has officially convinced me he has reached such astonishing levels of tourism that from now on I will gatekeep for all VTubers, including the Thoughts. I didn't realize the anti-problem was this bad," he says. So Scrump.
it's just him being silly.
Yeah, I understand. Continuing Devwatch, but on a sort of a small side issue. Oh no, the posts were deleted. God damn it, I didn't check. Okay, so what happened was someone tried to promote Dev on something by linking to shortfatotaku.com. And Dev said, "Uzalu bought this URL during his fucking with me. I don't know why you guys would bring it up." And no, it wasn't me. I did not. I wouldn't pay to fuck with you, Dev. That's not worth it. I can do it for free. I did not buy it. But I do know the people that did. And here is shortfatotaku.com. Something else here.
To be fair, if someone built a website and just put a silly meme of me on it, I think that was really funny. I'd link people to that. That's funny. It's so tame as well. It's so light. It's such light ribbing. Is what it is.
I don't really like the idea of squatting on a name, so I'm not really endorsing that. But I do find it funny, and he does kind of deserve to be bullied.
The thing is, I also know the people who did both the Cook.Shortfire Attacker thing and the other stuff as well, and a lot of them did like offer. They're like, "Look, if you want it, Dev, we'll give it. We'll give it you. You know, somebody else could do something worse with it." Because I know some people have talked to him about this in the past, and basically offered to give it to him, and he's basically gone into a huff and said no, which kind of makes it funnier. But I don't understand not having. It's very light ribbing.
Nothing is beyond our reach, indeed. And chat, you can still get to Cabal using cuck.shortfatotaku.com as the invite link, or not in Discord invite link. Just put it in your browser; it'll link here. And I can't remember who
Cabal
made this.
Does
it's nice
indeed
and good.
Prevail.
Indeed. So that is all our Devwatch for today, chat. I know you're very disappointed, but not to worry. We have politics.